Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Craft on Tap, where we talk about growth marketing for RIAs. I'm Stephen Beach, the CEO of Craft Impact, and with me I have Faustin Weber, who's one of our marketing strategists. Craft Impact is an outsourced CMO and digital marketing team for RIAs who want to grow. And today we're going to be talking about podcasts. We're going to be using the term podcast. We also mean video shows, right? So a lot of our clients are using a tool that is allowing them to record, but it also is recording them on video, usually with a webcam. So we can use, you can think of podcasts and the things we're going to talk about today in a couple different ways, but video, an audio only podcast. We're going to talk about tactics and tools, best practices. And distribution for podcast/video show. So thanks for joining us. We are really excited about this topic. There's so much to get into. There's a lot that we've learned the past few years by doing this with our clients, by learning from others in the industry. We're gonna highlight a few of those, talk through some different work examples, and hopefully, it'll be a practical, inspirational show for everybody here. So yeah, let's dive in. So Faustin, where do you start? For the advisors or for the managing partners of these firms, like if you're listening to this, where do you start with the goals? How do you start thinking about, what do you want this podcast or video show to look like?
Yeah, nice, Steven. So we're just going to do like a blitzkrieg of tactics here. So really, it's important to make sure that you have goals for your actual podcast and more specific than just like, hey, I want to do a podcast to drive more leads, right? Um, I just think it's important to make sure that you start with like, okay, is this going to be a podcast directed at this particular niche, or is this going to be a podcast directed at my clients? You just need to be able to understand exactly why you're doing it, even if you're already launched into it. It might be good to take a step back and just think about that because a lot of tactics that we're going to talk about take time, money, and energy, right? To get the most out of your podcast. And so having those goals as a North Star is just really important. You might not spend a lot of time on doing so many clips, right? Like we're going to talk through like short video clips if you're just focusing on your clients, but you might spend a lot more time on the podcast webpage, for instance, to make sure it's a really nice experience for your clients because you're going to be directing them to that when you send out your email newsletters, for instance. So just make sure you have a North Star. Stephen and I had another recording where we went on for like 30 minutes about goals. We decided not to go that route. If you would like to talk a little bit more about goals, just let us know. The second thing I will say is that, for those of you guys out there who are thinking, or men and women out there who are thinking about a podcast, starting one, or already have an audio podcast that you've been rolling and rocking and rolling with, video is just so important. I would just encourage you to make sure that you're prioritizing video. And so what tech do we use? Like what do we recommend for tech? And just went through this with a client that we're starting to do video with. We've tried a lot of different editors in the space. Descript is the best we've seen. We've tried Riverside, we've tried a lot of different tools. It's an online based recording software. And although there are some glitches from time to time, it's by far the best for video and audio. Can get you a nice transcript right away. It's easy to do the clipping and whatnot once you're in there. And so we'd recommend Descript. Then it is good to consider some like recording lights. You can find those on Amazon for podcasts that are, pretty simple to purchase. Less than $30-$40, just having some lights, like a foreground light that shines on your face and then a background light as well. And you can kind of tinker around with that to make sure that your lighting is adequate for the video. And then, there's a variety of different things that you can do from a video front. Like you can really go high end with $1,500, $2,000 camera, the really nice DSLR camera that will be like incredible quality. And we do have some clients that use that and it looks really, really good. But you can also get away with like a DSLR-ish type feel with like a $200 webcam. The Insta360 Link 2 is one that we've just been advocating for our clients to purchase. It's really nice, easy to use, super simple. Sometimes those DSLR cameras are a little bit difficult on the technical end to work with. And then although like that camera has an audio component to it, we do recommend this is really important, like a really nice microphone. You can start at like the lower budget end of like a $60 fee fine. microphone, or you can go up to some really, really nice mics. The one that we would recommend, typically, if you want to keep it around like $150, $200 price point, is a Samson Q9U. That's something you can find on Amazon, and you can just get a mic stand with it. So it was always important just to make sure that, like, from a tech front, you had some suggestions, some recommendations. We do have a video guide that we share with our clients that has like a bunch of different options. Stephen, what would you say about that? Just like on the tech, like how important video, like the quality,
No,
like
that's
the
good.
equipment
I
is.
mean, all in, you probably, with a good webcam, with some lights, with a good mic, with the script is $24 a month for a person. And then for our clients, they can give us access to that. That's all we just need one login and password. You're probably looking at $400 would
Yeah.
be like on the high end as far as what you're looking to spend. It's really not a lot. It's just more about, especially if you're going to invest in doing this long term. It's just more about knowing what to get and not wasting a lot of time searching through the blog articles that say here's the top 10 webcams for 2026. Blah blah blah. We've already done all that for you. So yeah, we'll link to these in the show notes, and hopefully it kind of saves people some time if they're looking to get started. I'll say my mic here, I think this mic is like around $200, Faustin. I think your mic is around 80. We were kind of just
Yeah.
testing these out and seeing if there's a big difference between the two. There's really not, in my opinion. Like, your mic sounds really great. So that's the Fine one, Fine. Again, we'll link to it in the show notes. But yeah, that's a good place to get started with the tech.
Uh,
That's the easy part, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's the easy part, but it's important, right? Because if you're going to invest time and energy, even if you're already doing it right now and you're using like a typical like AirPod or something like that, it just sounds so much better to have the upgrade. And it's worth it if you're going to be
yeah.
sharing, especially a lot of video content. And then the next thing is just from the tech side, like what do you use to publish your podcast? So if you're already doing it right now, I mean, you may have Libsyn or you may have Buzzsprout or Podbean. We've used all of them. If you don't have a platform, it's really nice to be able to use Spotify for creators, just signing up for an account, and you can push out your audio feed to Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Overcast, all the places that you want to be. The nice thing about Spotify creators is that you can upload a video, right? And we're continuing to see like great engagement, more and more market share. Like Spotify's taking, Apple Podcasts is still the gold standard, right? It's still what is on every iOS device. And so the majority of all of our clients' podcasts and this podcast are listened to on Apple Podcasts, but we're seeing Spotify get more and more to that share, and people are getting more and more adept at using Spotify for video. And so if you don't have a platform, Spotify for creators is a really great place to start. So just wanted to share that. Okay. So Stephen, we thought it would be good just to talk a little bit about like how do you get ideas for for a podcast, just in case you're like trying to get started, right? And we really say like, go back to your goals, who are you talking to? Or if you're talking to your clients, think to yourself, like, what are our clients asking? Like talk to your advisory team, right? We just had a client who launched a podcast this last year. That was their main goal. Hey, we just want to provide like really high level client service to supplement what we're doing, our advisory team is doing. And so we're going to answer questions that they're asking in the meetings, and then also, market updates, events, like what's happening in with the current events, and be able to address those head on. That was a really good starting point, gave a lot of clarity into what they were doing. Um, if you're thinking about more of like driving prospects or driving more awareness for your brand from this podcast, it'd be good to think through like, are there niches that you focus on typically with your marketing efforts? What are all the little sub challenges that they experience, right? Like if they're pre-retirees, like, are you thinking through the healthcare piece? Like good example would be like bouncing back between Medicare premiums and IRMA, and then thinking through like investment mistakes that you would make like 5 years heading into retirement, like how your strategy changes, and then bouncing back to, hey, here's what Social Security claiming looks like at 62 versus 70, and then going back to, which of these Roth conversion strategies works for you. So really just thinking through like from a prospect perspective and the goal of your podcast, like how do you address those big questions head on? Um, that would be something, Stephen, that we would typically recommend, just like as part of any content marketing strategy, right? Like your
Yeah.
podcast is just an avenue of that.
Yeah, it's good. I think again, it depends on what you're trying to do with it. what kind of creative outlet you see this as, but I think for most firms, it would probably make sense to start thinking about your clients, like you said, like what are they asking, and how do I, pin down to the clients that you really want to replicate, that your perfect ideal fit clients that you have, that you just want more and more of those. Kind of what are their, what are they asking you? What are their main challenges? What keeps them up at night? How are you uniquely positioned and qualified to serve them and to solve those challenges? Just start there. It's really simple. Like that's kind of what we've done with this podcast is just think about the questions that people ask me and our team on a daily basis, and you'll find they repeat a lot, right? So people have similar questions, and you can kind of group them, and then just start there. One of the guys we love talking about is Marcus Sheridan. He's a brilliant content marketer. He wrote a book called "They Ask, You Answer." Right, so like we've mentioned this before, but the New York Times called it revolutionary, and he, talked about how it was so funny they called it revolutionary. It's like this most simple thing ever. Like your prospects are asking you a question and you answer it. Like
Yeah.
it's just we don't have to make it more complicated than that. It's really simple. So if that kind of is in alignment with what you want to do and where your firm is going, I think that makes a ton of sense. We also talk just along the same lines. We talk a lot about marketing to our clients, not marketing to strangers, or at least spending, most of our time, like 80% of our time, marketing to clients. And what we mean by that is, yeah, like again, thinking about their challenges and how you guys are serving them, and how you can be even more referable, how you can generate even more wallet share. You do that by putting them first, just thinking about them first, and talking with them in mind. So I think if you're stuck or you're not sure where to start, um, I would advocate you start there around your clients and their topics, like you just said, their big questions, and then you can get into the subtopics around some of the nitty gritty topics. But anyhow, just start there, and you'll probably find that it resonates because, yeah, you're getting those questions already in person. Definitely, that means that people are asking those questions online or to each other, via word of mouth and so on. So hopefully, the podcast is a channel where you can answer those and kind of meet them where they are.
Yeah, I love that. Consider seasonality as well, just to like complement, just as an idea like that we've seen work well, just to complement what your client service team is doing or working with the clients in the annual meetings. You can really get seasonal with the podcasts that also come out around that time. If you want to like really dig into the on the content marketing side, you can also just like see what's doing really well on YouTube. Like start with some of the big names in the space, the Root Financial guys, Ari and James Knoll. I'm sure people listening to this recognize those names right away. Just go on their video feed for YouTube and just see the different ways that they position all the topics. The thumbnails are really captivating, interesting. And Stephen, we got to do an episode on just YouTube in particular. I know we're talking specifically about podcasts now, but there's a lot of overlap, right? Especially if you're thinking about pre-retiree clients that you want to go after, which so many of our so many people in the industry are. They have some really good stuff there. We use a tool called 1 of 10, which allows you to see like outliers with particular subtopics. And so that's like probably the next level, like thinking about something like Social Security strategies and seeing all the different ways that's being positioned with the different questions and seeing which videos do better than others. But I think for those of you listening, if you just start with some really high performers in the space, Streamline Financial is another one that talks, they talk a lot about different pre-retiree strategies. Just start there and think through how you could answer questions like that. Another great topic generator is just going onto Reddit on the subreddits for like what people are asking in spaces that are close to the ideal prospect that you're trying to bring in. Especially if it's a tech professional or different executives, or if you're looking for people in the between 30 and 50, right? Reddit continues to blow up. It's on every search engine results page. More and more people use it every month. And so you can get on there, see what people are asking. We found a lot of traction in the rich people PF subreddit. So that's slash rich people PF. And those are, it's specifically geared towards more affluent individuals that are asking some really sophisticated questions around like how their net worth, how they should invest in real estate. Like there's a lot of good stuff there to give you a good runway for how to talk, how to do a really engaging podcast episode, and just some other content marketing. Okay, Steven, do you want to talk a little bit about like, okay, so you got your topic, you're doing your video, some things about the video production side that would be good to consider.
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, we could do a whole episode on YouTube channel optimization and brand distribution on YouTube and so forth. There's a lot. We've learned a lot there. I even say, I mean, in the last 6 months to a year, I know that we as an agency have learned a lot and continue to learn a lot about YouTube marketing. That's a whole other world. But just to touch on some of those things lightly, images and graphs can really help improve the engagement of the video. We have advisors maybe talking about a market commentary and supporting it there. Retirement planning, there's all kinds of graphs and illustrations and returns and all these kind of things. You can show these visually that are really helpful. Say like, at the beginning, the opener or the teaser at the beginning is really important, especially for YouTube. They'll track, how many people make it past 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So like keeping people engaged at first, especially at the first piece of the video, is really important. The better engagement you have, the more the YouTube algorithm will reward that, and you will see impressions and views go up following that. And then I think just for us, generally speaking, we like to just jump right into the topic. We're not, have you noticed on this podcast show, I'm not trying not to spend too much time asking Faustin, what he thinks about Notre Dame football, or what he did over the weekend. I mean, that's great. People can kind of get a sense for your personality, but for the most part, we like keeping that really brief and then just kind of getting right into the topic. We know people's time and attention is already, there's high demand for that. There's high demand for your time and attention. And so we want it to be, pinpointed on the things that we think are most important to you, which probably isn't, whether Faustin's concerned about Marcus Freeman leaving for the New York Giants or not. I know you already are, but we don't need to talk about that for 5 minutes to start off, right? So just
Yeah,
jumping right into it.
because you got it.
Yeah.
You said that really well. You're thinking of this finished product, the end of the podcast episode, being this like evergreen resource, unless you're talking about super timely market events, right? And that's a whole nother beast. But if you're talking about how you help potential clients with these very specific challenges, you want it to be something that can be used for years, right? And it can be used as an educational resource to demonstrate your credibility and build trust. That's why you spend so much time on video getting that nice equipment so you can quickly represent that to them. And so if you spend too much time dawdling on other things, you just lose that ability, right? I want to go back to something you said around the charts and the graphs. That may feel intimidating for a lot of advisors listening. You can get a lot of the way there with AI nowadays, right? Like I really think Claude does a nice job with this, Anthropic's Claude, and also Gemini on Google. Both of those do a really nice job adding visuals. So you can just at the end of your episode, take the transcript. If you're using Descript, that's really easy to do. You can just export the transcript, throw it into Claude, throw it into Gemini, and say, hey, can you create some nice visuals? And then kind of go back and forth with it to get it simplified. On the craft front, like how we help our clients, we'll rebrand those and make them look really nice. But for you, especially if you're just trying to get them off the ground, if that feels insurmountable, just some nice visuals that you can add back into the actual production value gives a lot. It enhances everything about the video experience. And then also when you're posting it on your blog or wherever you're sharing it on social, you can use those images as a way to provide some more value. And then like one more thing, Stephen, with the cold open, that may feel a little bit foreign. What we're trying to avoid here, guys, is everyone listening, you don't want on a full YouTube video that you're going to publish, or even when you first start the episode, for there to be a delay between the time people start to listen and the time that you actually start talking. So when you do have like a longer, like minute and a half opening or something along those lines, even if people know you well, it's harder to get to that spot. I know everyone on here has been on like a podcast platform where you have to listen to 4 minutes of ads and you're just like skip, 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 skip. Especially when you're building your presence, you just want to jump right in to the topic. It's critical on YouTube, right? Those first 10 to 15 seconds as people discover you for the first time, you want them to stay on and engage. And so one way you get around that is just pulling a really engaging part of your episode, like 10, 15 seconds, throw that right at the beginning, even without an intro. And then you can build into your 10-second intro after that. And then you get into the full episode. So little techniques like that can really go a long way. Um,
Nice.
okay. Next, Stephen, the title and description. Okay. So we're going to spend a second talking about this because it is so important for like the evergreen SEO nature of your episode, whether people are finding you through Google for your what you publish on your website, or through YouTube for when they search, or through Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Make sure you call out keywords in the title. Don't name it something that's like technical jargon that's kind of like a play on words, because it's nice for your audience that knows you, but it doesn't lend itself well to discovery. So if you talk about retirement topics, throw in retirement in there. If you talk about Social Security, talk about Social Security. Don't get too cute to try to come up with a really engaging title, when the reality is that people who find you are going to be searching for the more generic terms that feel generic to you as an advisor, right? So just think about that. You can use some like keyword research tools, Ahrefs or SEMrush or something like that. But honestly, if you just think about, hey, what would my client call this? Just put that in the title, because that really helps down the road. And then in terms of the descriptions, you can, this is something you can use AI for when you have the transcript that doesn't really make that much of an impact on the viewer experience, where you can just have a quick summary, a few sentences about what people are going to get out of the episode, and then make sure you have the timestamps that coordinate with the different chapters. AI does a really nice job with this. Sometimes it's a little bit off, especially if you're like moving around a short teaser clip to the beginning. But you can get around it with some logistical fixing, and it just makes a big experience for, especially on YouTube, how it shows the chapters that people can jump right into it. And Spotify does a really nice job of this as well, like creating nice chapters so that people can go right to the different subtopics that you're talking about. It just helps with overall discoverability moving forward as well. Um, okay, anything with that, Stephen, that you wanted to mention?
Good. No, I kind of want to just take a pause here, maybe take a step back as we're talking. And I know we're going to get even into more specific tactics and best practices and strategy and things. If you're listening to this in the car, there's going to be so much information that you can't possibly write down or remember or be
Yeah.
expected to execute yourself. But I guess my hope for this, I could have said this at the beginning. Isn't necessarily that you're able to do all this on your own. If you want to, please, like, that'd be awesome. We're gonna lay it all out here. But whether you work with us, another agency, freelancers, podcast companies, whatever it is, hopefully, these things, these pointers, where these conversation topics we're bringing up, like, give you like the ammo, or kind of arm you with the right information that you can therefore ask the right questions or be expecting certain things out of whoever you're working with, so that you can get the most out of it. So anyhow, I guess I just want to take a pause there and say we're going to go even deeper and more granular with, specific tactics here, into YouTube, into Spotify specifically. But also, hopefully, our goal is, like, you don't have to do this all yourself. We're the things we're saying and all the details we do that. It takes a lot of time, frankly. And, we've kind of learned it over time. But, hopefully it's helpful regardless. I just want to throw that at you.
Yeah.
It's like, everyone to take a deep breath and
Yeah, you don't want
don't
to
feel like you have to
overwhelm.
remember all this or execute it yourself.
Yeah, the blitzkrieg approach of the episode.
Right.
That's why it's so important to have that North Star, so you can figure out which of these is important and which is not. To
Right.
your particular podcast. Uh, okay, and then I will say, like, thumbnails are really important. They're really important. Alternating back and forth between a thumbnail that has, like, Stephen and me, versus a thumbnail that just has the title. Um, I do think it's important to make sure that it's not just on YouTube when people are finding you for the first time and your video gets suggested. in, like suggested videos or in the browse features where they can like click in. You want that to be compelling and engaging and show them right away. But also, anytime you're going to have all of your podcasts laid out on a page or on the actual feed itself, you want the thumbnail, you want the imagery, the visuals to fully reflect the content of the episode and make it attractive and compelling, because that's how you get the most out of these episodes, is that not just the one time listen, it's ongoing, right? It's the ability for people to go back and see episodes 20 and 30 and 40 ago, right? And the way that you do that is making the titles specific to the topics, right, for better discoverability, like we talked about, but then having the thumbnails, having the smaller little thumbnails that show up on each episode. Those are important for the overall experience and making sure that you continue to get those listens down the road, 6 months from now, 12 months down the road, especially if those are
Yep.
those evergreen topics.
Good.
Um, okay, talking about YouTube, we talked about YouTube a lot. It's really important to publish your full videos on YouTube, right? I mean, you can build a playlist with your YouTube channel, right? You may have another video series strategy, but just make sure that you're posting these things on YouTube. Sometimes we do start working with clients and they do this great video, they publish it one place, but they're not on YouTube. YouTube continues to be a top 2, top 3 search engine, right? Even with all of AI. Google AI overviews pulls up YouTube clips all the time, YouTube videos all the time. YouTube's consulted a lot in AI responses on ChatGPT. It's just important to make sure that you're continuing to build your overall brand awareness and presence by publishing all your podcast episodes. It's another great way for you to get the longevity 6, 12, 18 months from now as well. So just make sure you're doing that. And let me see here. And then just make sure you got to front load the hook. Like you got to front load it. You're trying to keep them on for 30 to 60 seconds. And just think about, not for your particular audience of everyone who always listens, when you're publishing those videos on YouTube, think about how people are discovering you for the first time. I just can't emphasize that enough, because that's really where you're going to drive that better brand awareness. And you want them to be instantly attracted and compelled to continue to listen so you can drive more subscribers. Okay. YouTube also has the added benefit too of being able to embed on your website, which is really valuable. Okay, so let's go down. Let's talk a little bit about the website, Stephen. So it is important to make sure that you have a way for people to see these, like, especially as your podcast takes off, you got 10, 15, 20 episodes. You want to be able to share out the podcast and promote it through your email. And you also want people to be able to find it, new prospects, when they get on your site. And so that's why we really advocate for a podcast specific page, dedicated podcast page that has information about the host, gives a short summary, has those nice thumbnails like we talked about, those nice visuals, lays it all out. Maybe it uses pagination, which is like you only show the latest 6 episodes, but then you can load more, so people get a full picture of all the ins and outs of what you've talked about. I can't say how important this is just from an overall experience. If you have 30, 40, 50, 60 episodes, give people that find your website the ability to be able to quickly see those resources. Even if they don't look at any of them or listen to any of them, it just demonstrates a breadth and a depth of expertise that gives a really good impression, even if someone was referred to you, right? So that's something that we typically would do with our clients, especially when they get their podcast up and running. What would you say about that, Stephen, just in terms of like the web page?
Just that's well said. I think it gives you kind of a house where you can demonstrate your content library. Think of it like that. We have advisors that are now into their 50th, 60th episode. At first, they were like, "We just want to get started and start to build the library so that people can see, like like you said, the depth of our knowledge on these topics, and just see that we're consistent about it, on a week, whatever their cadence is, in this case, weekly. Yeah, that we're demonstrating our expertise and trying to share that every week, and then people eventually, will see that and say, "Oh wow, these guys really know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a long time." So it's just kind of building that content library. I guess, to use a marketing term, you're building brand equity, right? So
Yeah,
we talk a lot
nice.
about different types of equity. Thanks. Yeah. For financial advisors, brand equity, that's a nice flashy one. So you want to throw that out there to your freelancer or your agency you're working with and see what they say. But you're just building that as you build out that library, and a dedicated podcast page is a great way to do it. I agree.
And then I will say too, it's important to have on that page, and also have on that page a way to subscribe to hear about new episodes. And we're talking about email here in just a second. So just give a quick way for people that say, "Oh, I'd like to, get more information about those episodes," have a sign up. And then each page should link out to a sub page, right? Where it has the episode information, the title, the embedded YouTube clip. I would advocate for that embedded YouTube clip so that they can click into your YouTube, see other, episodes as well. And then we've gone back and forth with this, whether or not you should have a transcript of the episode or a shorter, more like ChatGPT/Google optimized set of headers with the key topics and some of the key points that you made. What we typically would do now, because honestly, like putting transcripts, even though you can get an export from Descript, putting transcripts on the actual pages themselves is a real pain to get exactly right with like headers and everything. So now what we typically would do is just create like a summary of the big sections as you go through, and making sure that we link to other episodes that are the same kind of topics, so that we can build that internal linking presence to help with SEO. But what you just want to make sure that people can go listen, watch each of the episodes, and have a clear idea of the summary and the key points, the key takeaways, I should say. So that all should be part of your website if you're trying to make sure that you have a really nice podcast presence on your site. Okay.
Nice.
All right. So email marketing. This is another key tenet. So don't be shy about sending out, like you're trying to build that list from your podcast page, like we just talked about. Don't be shy about sending out each new episode, right? Like you can share out the episode, you can share out quick takeaways. This has got to be part of your overarching strategy for your firm. If you have a big list of prospects and they're segmented, maybe some of the episodes are not going to be exactly specific to that group that you've broken out in your list. So try to be as relevant and resonate as much as you can with the people you're sending it to. But for a lot of the clients that come to us, Stephen, I know they just have a big list. They've just got a big old list, right? It's maybe it's prospects and clients, maybe it's just everyone. So if you are in that situation, you're not alone, first of all. Just blast out your episodes to them. I think best practice, and this is what we do over time, is you build out a subscription list just for your podcast, but not everyone's at that point. And I think especially when you're trying to promote and maximize it, do not feel hesitant about sending out those new episodes, because if you've done all the steps that we've talked about before, they can be really helpful and engaging and educational, and they really do a lot to build brand equity for your firm. What would you say about that, Stephen? You think it's just good to blast it
Well
out?
done on using the term brand equity. It's a
Yeah.
good follow on. And yeah, I think because again, you can get into paralysis by analysis with, speaking of internal leaking, we have a really good episode on email marketing that is one of our more popular episodes. I think people really like that because we were talking about segmentation and content that resonates with different personas, and how you think about that and how you go about doing it. It is a little bit more advanced, I guess, to your point. So again, like, don't stress about it if you're just getting started. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You can blast it out to everybody and
Yeah.
just see what happens. And then as you go and as you get more sophisticated, as you get some traction, then you can think about segmentation and kind of tailoring it to the folks. But you're not going to offend anybody, right? If you're, like you
Yeah.
said, if you followed our advice before, you're not going to offend anybody. You're not going to piss anybody off. So, fire away. You may as well be
Yeah,
proud of it
although
and
I
fire
will
away.
say it is probably good to think through like the types of subscriptions you had, because I remember early on, Stephen, we would send out these beautiful marketing emails, and then there would be the curmudgeon retired client who would unsubscribe from everything, and then we were trying to send out like RMD notifications in the fall, and I'm like, oh, he's unsubscribed. We only have one subscription, so now we
Okay,
know,
fair enough. Yeah.
now we know to make
So,
sure that you're just thinking like client service versus some of your marketing materials, but.
yeah,
Uh,
fair enough. That gets into the software as well, right? So
yeah.
mostly we use HubSpot. We've used Constant Contact. We've used MailChimp. not huge fans of MailChimp. We've used ConvertKit, which is now just called Kit. And so
Yeah.
all these different tools, they kind of all do the same thing, frankly, but you can set up different subscription types, so you could have general newsletter. Think of that as one subscription type. You could have, market updates as another subscription type, and you could have client service as another subscription type. So what you're saying, right, is set those up. You could set that up where you could set a subscription type to podcast episode. That way, if you do send it out and somebody
Yeah.
gets upset, curmudgeony, and in your word, and wants to unsubscribe, they could just unsubscribe from the podcast one, but not all the other
Yeah.
emails that you need to send them.
We're getting
Okay,
in.
nice.
I like that.
Good
We're getting
caveat.
into the nitty gritty a little bit. But
Yeah.
okay. So another thing about email, it's LinkedIn specific. Getting a little bit of traction out of podcast episodes being shared as LinkedIn newsletters. So creating a LinkedIn newsletter from the firm, right? Especially if you're not already doing this, with like a firm newsletter, it's got like other content topics or like sharing out spotlights or anything like that. Or if you have an individual advisor who you really want to position as like the head, right? The rainmaker, the CEO, the founder, one of the partners, they can create their own newsletter, or the firm can, that this would be a host, right? A host of the podcast. They can just share out their episodes on LinkedIn. And especially if your target audience is on LinkedIn, this is really good, right? Because you don't have their emails yet necessarily for like all of your connections or all of your followers, but you can very easily invite a bunch of followers to your newsletter. And some of them will say it, some of them won't. You can also set up like new people that follow or connect automatically get the request to subscribe to the newsletter, which some of them will accept, some of them won't. And so in this way, you're like sharing out a lot of the same content you would send in an email. You're actually just putting into your newsletter, and you can get more exposure, more awareness that way for your video podcast. So anyway, just wanted to share that. It's very closely related to email.
Nice.
Okay, let's talk about my favorite thing now. So the real value of doing video is not the long form video on YouTube. It's really what you can do from a social distribution perspective with the clips. So what we would typically do is like whatever channels you're going after, we're going to take that long form video. We're going to find the most engaging 3 to 4 clips. Some of them will have those images that we talked about, those really nice charts. We're going to clip those short videos, minute or less, minute and a half, maybe max. Then we're going to publish them on YouTube Shorts. So you have your YouTube channel. We're going to publish them on YouTube Shorts. We're going to publish them on your company Instagram, your company Facebook. We're going to publish them on every now and then. We're going to publish them on your LinkedIn personal page, and we're going to publish them on your LinkedIn company page. And we're going to set up a cadence for that, extracting the value out of the clip, putting that into the caption, the copy, and we're going to post that over a 2 to 3 week span for your one episode. This is the beauty of using video, is that you can maximize the overall awareness of your one episode by getting these small clips, sharing them across multiple channels. And I love piggybacking back and forth, especially on LinkedIn, between sharing company clips and then having the personal advisor, because we know you get better engagement overall as a personal account. Sharing a clip that's also from the episode. We're not trying to link to the episode, right? Because we know that suppresses engagement. We're not trying to just push everybody to the episode itself, but we're just referencing it tangentially, like on the podcast this week, sharing the educational content of the clip itself. And in that way, you gain followers across the different company accounts. You gain followers from the personal accounts, and you're just driving more and more awareness of the fact that you have this podcast, so that maybe you get the follow, which then ends up going to the LinkedIn newsletter, which then ends up getting them to subscribe to your YouTube channel, which ends up getting them to look up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and actually listen to the audio. You're also just generating more content awareness overall for your actual practice. This is one of the reasons I love podcasts so much, is because they create a systematic way to distribute video content, getting in front of people. So you're demonstrating your expertise and credibility and authority across multiple channels. And all you've done is record a 30 to 60 minute podcast episode. And so this is really the beauty. If you can set this out editorially on a calendar, over a 3 to 6 month window about you're going to have these overlapping episodes being published on YouTube and on the website. And you're also going to be sharing content clips that demonstrate the value of your expertise across a 2 to 4 week window. They overlap over each other. All of a sudden, you have this vibrant content engine, right? Um, and that's what I love about it. I just get so excited thinking about it because that's really what drives that omni-channel awareness. What would you say? What do you think, Stephen?
I love you. First of all, I love the passion. You almost
Yeah.
fell out of the chair for the people that are watching this. I don't
Yeah.
know if everyone caught that or not. I think, yeah, you said it. Content engine. That's the
Yeah.
best way to describe it. I think like gives you the gives you the core of it. If you think of maybe like a hub and spoke, like this is the hub. This is where you. And again, we're trying to be efficient with your time, so it's 30, 45 tops an hour would be. I mean, most of our advisors talk for 30 minutes or less, and then think of all the spokes that come off of that across channels like LinkedIn. You mentioned a few: LinkedIn, Instagram Reels. We're casting out the Spotify, maybe Facebook, YouTube, email newsletters, your website. Like, there's just so much distribution that can happen by chopping that up and using it in different ways. And that is a lot of work, right? So it's like maybe 20%, 10% of the time is actually going into the episode, the recording, and that kind of stuff. But then like the distribution, the execution that happens after that for 1 day to 2 weeks, where the content just continues to work for you. Yeah, that's a lot of it. That could be 80 to 90% of the time. So anyhow, that's really important to think about, like the execution piece. But yeah, just think of it as like the content engine. You need something that's going to kind of drive and push it forward. And then from there, like, yeah, we can use it across channels and with different formats, text, video, images, like all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, it gives us something to work with.
Yeah, love that. Real quick, like YouTube shorts are good because they drive a lot of subscribers versus the longer term videos. They drive subscribers too, but it just helps you over time to be publishing both, even though it's on the same channel. So I just wanted to clarify that. If you're not doing YouTube shorts, I just would try it out, right? They continue to grow. Um, and it's just I wouldn't say easy, but it's the same clip. You just have to like repurpose the caption a little bit. It can really help on that end. Um, okay, a few more things that we're wanting to mention today. You can get a lot of leverage. I don't know if anyone has listened to our pretty comprehensive LinkedIn in 2026 episode, which was a few episodes back. So if you haven't, that's just another plug. But we talked a little bit about this like Walmart-Waffle House strategy, right? Where Waffle House puts their stores right next to Walmart because the same kind of people that go to Walmart are also ones that stop at Waffle House. And there's something you can do with podcasts that's really similar to that. It's this idea that you find another creator in the space, someone else who is doing podcasts to a similar type of audience, someone that's going to be another Walmart, right? That has an audience that you want to overlap with. And you build a relationship with them. You reach out to them, you connect with them. Maybe you already have a past relationship with them and you just ask to be on their podcast and ask if they can come on your podcast. This is something that we've seen work so well, right? Because what ends up happening is that if it's a really good episode, you think through all the questions, you queue them up ahead of time so they know exactly what to expect. You can really make them look good to the point of where they want to share and talk about and promote your podcast. This is so big. And you can do this in all types of ways, right? When marketing, this is probably very familiar to some of you in the advisory space, right? That work a lot with COIs and you do this a lot with accountants, state attorneys, and everything else. Just apply that to the marketing world. If you are working with an agency or you are working with an internal marketing person, you can help that person share your content. So you write the emails, right? You create the images, you create the social posts, queuing them up to be able to promote the episode to the best of your ability. And that drives subscribers in such a way, Stephen, that none of these other techniques do, right? And it does it in a way that expedites it really quickly. Whereas like the subscribers you could get in 6 to 12 months, you can get with one episode because you're overlapping with their audiences. So in that way, you're essentially like finding a Walmart and you want to make sure that you plant your Waffle House right next to them. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yeah, I love it. I think, yeah, if you were, if you're starting small and you're trying to generate more brand awareness the quickest way possible. Find the Walmarts, find the people who have larger audiences, ideally with engaged audiences, and then what you're trying to do is pitch them on, what gaps they have in their content, or how you could add more value to their audience, and just demonstrate that, hey, you're in a space, you're in a place where you can do that. You really want to bring this topic or this topic to their audience, and you think that they might find it helpful, and try to be a guest on their podcast. Or like you said, you host your own and you say, hey, I'd love to have you on as a guest, and here's why I think it would be really helpful for my audience. So it does a few things. Like, one, I think just exposure in terms of like marketing metrics, like impressions and brand awareness. And we've done it with clients where all of a sudden there's huge spikes in followers on whatever the channel is. Like, we're using Instagram and YouTube, so we got a lot more YouTube subscribers and a lot more Instagram followers, like immediately that day, and then the next day once the episodes went live. So you'll see these like spikes. But then I think also too, like, you're developing ideally, you're not doing it just for the marketing metrics. You're developing a relationship with somebody who can give you qualified referrals over time, and maybe add value to you in other ways. Who knows? But just, it's kind of a, yeah, it's kind of a relationship building thing. It seems like a low barrier to entry there for the other person who you're inviting on, or who you're trying to get on their podcast. And I think sometimes it can lead to really fruitful relationships.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I should clarify too that they don't necessarily need to have a podcast, right? Like it's sometimes it's enough if they're really good for your audience and they have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 followers on Instagram, or subscribers on YouTube. Sometimes it's enough just to get them on your podcast, right? And promote them. And you can really get a lot of followers on that platform just from that exposure. One thing I've
Yep.
seen that is just something to note. It is helpful to know about like best marketing practices when you're trying to get somebody else to promote your content. And what I mean by that is there are individuals that are willing to repost, and they're willing to, write a little bit about their experience with you on the podcast. But unless you give them some clear cut captions and like kind of give them a little tutorial about how to upload a native video versus share out a link to avoid the suppression, you just have to coach them sometimes a little bit on that. They might be a big, influencer in whatever space you're trying to go after, but they might not be like the biggest marketing pro, or they might have another agency that they're working with, right? So it is important to think through like all the logistics to maximize the exposure there. Um, okay. And then this last item here is just about like there's a tremendous amount of value in getting on a top list of podcasts in the space, right? It behooves you when you start to create one of these podcasts, just look and see who are the other podcasts that are in the space that you're about to go after, and are they featured anywhere? Are they featured on any lists? Who writes those lists? Which company puts out those lists? Which editors and journalists are putting out those lists, and how often are they done? Are they on a quarterly basis? Are they on an annual basis? Then how can you get to those editorial writers? How can you get to those journalists? Is it building a relationship with them over time? Is it connecting to someone they're connected with and then trying to get more exposure there? It's important to think through strategically how you can get an in with those individuals, because if you are able to get your podcast off the ground on one of those top 3, top 10, top 15 lists, you can really see your downloads skyrocket overnight. Great example is a client that we just had. We've been trying to build relationships for a while, trying to do a lot of like sharing on of the podcast clips, just like we talked about, on all the different social channels. But we're also connecting on LinkedIn, and we're trying to message people after they follow on Instagram and just thank them for following. And we ended up, after all this work, on a top 5 list of all podcasts for 2026 for this particular niche that he was going after. And we saw her downloads go through the roof. Like the latest episode was like 1,500 downloads, right? And we were getting consistent like 30, 40, 50 sort of working there. And all of a sudden we have 1,500. And, I like investigated. I'm like, is this a bot? But we didn't see any red flags because it was spread out location wise. And we realized it was because this person that we had worked to build a relationship with had ended up putting our podcast on that list. And I just think that that's really powerful. I don't think you can build your entire podcast strategy around it, but just be aware in the space of who the person is, what list you want to get on, and can you build a relationship with that person. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. I guess to humble brag, this just happened with us with the Kitsy's list around Craft on Tap being named a new and notable podcast for Kitsy's for 2026. And then all of a sudden, yeah, we see this big boost. And then, for us and for the client you're talking about, we see new leads come in that are scheduling calls. Then it's a qualified call that we didn't have before. And it's triggered by the podcast list in this case. So yeah, I use this term maybe too much, but quick way to growth hack to more exposure, more awareness around what you're doing and around your podcast.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so just a quick hitter of different things here that across the different channels. So really important that you have links to your podcast, right? Like if you have a podcast page, awesome. It's a little bit harder on Facebook and Instagram to drive clicks, right? And we don't like to put links in our LinkedIn posts themselves. So consider, if it's not the firm website, consider a link to your podcast, right? If you're really going to be pushing it in your actual personal profile on LinkedIn, make sure on Instagram and Facebook, you have it up at the top in your description so people can see it, right? Because you want there to be the jumping off point to actually be able to engage from. If you think about how somebody does, a platform, they're not jumping off to websites all the time, but they will follow when they like a clip, and then they'll go to the profile page, look at it. You want there to be the podcast right up at the top if you're trying to maximize the engagement, right? So that's an important piece. Jumping over to Spotify, one thing that we forgot to mention on Spotify, clips are really powerful for driving more awareness. And I don't just mean clips that you do like you would for YouTube Shorts or some of these other social channels. I mean, you can actually upload a like promotional clip of you that's outside the episode, which can get in people's feeds, especially if you've used some of those keywords like we talked about. If somebody's looking up retirement focused podcasts and you have a retirement specific title, a little clip of you promoting the podcast before they jump into it can be really impactful. So Spotify, probably not a good connection with retirement and Spotify since it's usually a younger demographic. But if you are really focusing on Spotify, right, and you're uploading video, consider a clip that you can promote it, and consider like pulling out a couple of clips from the episode. Because if you notice, if you use that platform, you'll see videos just start right away from like the longer form podcasts, but you can have clips that will also pull in to people's feeds as well. That can drive more interest, just like you would on YouTube Shorts. Okay, a couple of other quick hitters. Just make sure you're asking every time. Every time you have an opportunity, like right now, if you guys can give us a 5-star rating. I know you can't really do that. It's a little bit of a gray area with your podcast in the advisory space as it relates to compliance, but you can ask to leave a rating, right? And then just ask for the listeners to share episodes. Just make sure you do that every single time. It's easy to forget doing that, especially when you get into the rhythm of things. Then if you get a decent amount of, comments or listeners, you can start, asking for a little bit of a Q&A, like actually requesting questions and then answering those questions. If you get enough, you can even make a segment out of it. That doesn't really fit exactly with the evergreen nature of the long form videos like we were talking about, but it does help with overall engagement, right? So most of us are probably a little bit far off from that, a couple years down the road, but just if you do have, 1,000 plus 2,000, 3,000 listeners per episode, it might be worth considering building in a Q&A or a specific Q&A episode that you can do on like a bi-weekly basis. And then a little bit about just like paid promotion, something we're still exploring a little bit, Stephen, for some of our clients who really want to expedite growth. But you can do some Spotify ads for your podcast to try to drive more listenership. So it's just it's out there. It's not something that we would start with, but it's just like another one of our tools in our tool belt to try to increase overall podcast and firm exposure. Okay. Um, what do you think? Do you think we got everything? Maybe got some ideas swirling?
If you don't have any ideas in your head, or if you haven't grasped any of this now and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I could do this or that, then um, I guess we failed. But I would be shocked if that was the case, because I think there's a lot of tactical information in here. Again, it might be overkill if you're trying to do this yourself, but just at least we can like give you the ideas and kind of share how we're thinking about it, how we're doing it with our clients, and what we're doing with ourselves is kind of using ourselves as the guinea pig here, which is kind of fun. And the other thing I would say is don't be too hard on yourself if you're not doing all these things, or if you're not even, if you're just far away from accomplishing all, that's okay. Like we're in the same boat. I'm actually taking notes here about things that we should do ourselves to add on to this. So it's, give yourself some grace. The hardest part is kind of getting started, in our opinion, and then you can kind of build and iterate and continue to grow from there. So that'd be my kind of the parting thought there. Any summary parting thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would just say get on video, you know. It's tough, especially if you're a little bit nervous about it initially, but it just ends up paying so many dividends in what you can do with it. And podcast still a great opportunity for marketing in 2026. It's old by now, right? The tactic, but I think we were just reading a statistic that 2025, over 55% of Americans listen to a podcast or regularly listen to a podcast on a monthly basis, and they average 7 hours a week. So it's not like this is going away on the audio end, and then you get all the benefits on the video end too. So I just get excited about it. I can just keep talking for the next hour.
It's not going away. It's also, I think for us, we talk a lot about trying to get the thought, get the thought leadership, get the expertise out of our clients' heads and
Yeah.
into our hands somehow. And then, so, it's just a very simple way to do that. Even if you don't have a polished show, or even if it's not on video, and you're just talking audio only, it can still be that content engine that we talked about that kind of fuels everything else and fuels your distribution across the channels. So, let's leave it there. Hopefully this has been helpful. I know we got into the weeds there. I think most people would find that helpful. Hopefully that's the case for you. Shameless plug. Yeah, please give us a 5-star rating. We can ask for 5-star rating because we don't have compliance to deal with. So on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or however you listen to this, it would really help us if you gave us a nice review. And then I don't even think you need to leave a comment. Honestly, you just click 5 stars. And then yeah, if you'd like to talk about what this looks like for your firm, for your RIA, and how we could potentially help, how it relates to you, please reach out to us via our website, craftimpact.com. And yeah, we'll get into a really specific conversation around what you're trying to do, and give you some feedback, and see if it makes sense to continue talking about us helping. So that's all we have. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with more soon.
Thank you.